Hi, and welcome everyone from the high desert of Arizona. This is Hobo Radio, and I am your host, Professor Tuck. Today is Privacy Tuesday, which is part of the Survival broadcast series. Every weekday, we expose one system that's rigged against you and how to survive it. Today is about privacy, or more accurately, the illusion of it, because what they're calling safety, security, or trust is just state managed obedience coded into platforms tracked by AI and sold to the highest bidder. Not good to see you, Clyde. Um, hey, we're live though. Good to see you though, buddy. Okay, so I do need to give you guys a disclaimer before I go ahead and do this. And if you guys hear me talking to other people, that's because I'm not hearing voices. I promise you. I have my phone on from my device, and I run the broadcast through my laptop. So those that are in the green room have the access to be able to come in and chit chat with me before the broadcast gets started, and then after the broadcast, then we get to have an after party and sit back and discuss whatever you guys want to discuss. So you should consider on coming over to coming on over to Patreon and becoming a member so that you can get into the green room. So here's a disclaimer. I am not here to give you legal advice. I want to make sure that this is extremely important. I am not a cybersecurity expert. I am not selling encryptions, fake VPNs, or the illusion of digital freedom. By the end of this, the illusion of digital freedom will break away, and you will probably understand that you won't be able to get away from it because of how overreaching it is. What I'm sharing is what I've lived through, studied, and survived, from the street level surveillance to platform censorship and everything in between. So why does this matter? Is because they told you to obey the algorithm, to trust fact checkers, to just opt out if you don't like it. But here's the truth. You don't have rights anymore. You have terms of service. And if you speak out, opt out, or think outside their sandbox, you're not just wrong. You're flagged, you're labeled, you're tracked. This isn't just about privacy. It's about power and how digital surveillance is rewriting the rules of freedom. So let's break it down article by article and show you what they're doing and how they're doing it and what you can still do about it before the trap closes. But here's my ask from you guys. If you believe this work matters, I'm inviting you to stand with it. Support this broadcast, share it, and if you can, contribute. Your support funds the research behind these deep dives, the infrastructure to host it off platform, the independence to say what others won't. So go to the support tab here on hobotuck.com. Even $5 a month helps keep this broadcast going without being held hostage by ads, sponsors, or algorithmic compliance. This is why I'm deplatforming from YouTube, because I'm not here to build a brand. I'm here to build a resistance. And every tribe starts from somewhere. So what we're going to talk about is our first article. What's happening in New Orleans is bigger than you think. So there was an article that came up, and we're going to start local because that's where the illusion begins. Back in 2020, after nationwide protests against police brutality, cities across the country began banning facial recognition. New Orleans was one of them. They passed what looked like real reform, a ban on live camera surveillance, facial recognition, and predictive policing. It made headlines, it calmed the public, but here's what they didn't tell you. The ban didn't stop the technology. It just pushed it underground. So if you guys remember when I was in NOLA, which is New Orleans, Louisiana, that's what train hoppers will call it. If you guys remember when I was there, when I was trying to hop on trains and I was also sleeping under the bridges, you guys heard me talk about all these surveillance cameras and how I thought it was kind of weird and that this was something to be concerned about. Well, as of June, I think it's June 12th was the date of this article, those cameras are now starting to get something else to happen to them. But here's what they didn't tell you. The ban didn't stop the technology. It did push it underground. Because according to the Washington Post investigation published in May of 2025, the New Orleans Police Department had been secretly working with a nonprofit called Project NOLA, a private surveillance network that quietly installed more than 200 AI-enabled cameras across the city. These weren't just security cameras. They were running real-time facial recognition software and they were tied directly to officer smartphones giving live alerts about so-called matches. Let that sink in for a second. The public believed the tech had been banned, but in the background, a private nonprofit was running surveillance in cooperation with law enforcement, bypassing the very oversight the public thought they had achieved. Fast forward to June 12, 2025, that charade has finally dropped. City leaders are introducing an ordinance to re-legalize real-time facial recognition, not just because they're starting a new program, but because they've already been using it. The new law is just a retroactive rubber stamp to make everything legal. This is surveillance laundering, or whatever you might want to call it. They broke the public's trust, then asked permission after the fact. And it's not just New Orleans. What's playing out here is a case study in how surveillance gets normalized. First, they test it in secret, then they formalize it with policy, and finally, they scale it to the national or global level. That's where we go next, because while this New Orleans drama was unfolding in plain sight, something much bigger was happening overseas, and quietly, the U.S. was already involved. The December 2024 blueprint is about the U.S. and EU joint AI governance. Okay, in December 2024, just 6 months before New Orleans publicly acknowledged their surveillance scheme, the European Commission and U.S. Department of Commerce announced a new international coordination framework, the AI Safety and Misinformation Task Force. On the surface, it was branded as technical partnership, a way for Western allies to harmonize AI standards, but underneath the policy language was a clear goal: to define what AI is allowed to say and what it isn't. Let's look at the language. The task force will explore best practices for labeling AI-generated content and aligning guidelines for AI safety. Let's read between the lines on this. This means censorship, not by flagging illegal content, but by creating guidelines that set limits of acceptability. It's not just about bots. It's about people. Because once you define what AI can say, you define what's safe to publish, promote, or even think online. You create a binary world, aligned or dangerous. So either you're trusted or you're threatening. Either you're inbound or you're erased. Now, here's the connection. The same principles that follow platforms to flag and de-rank your content are being implemented in the real-world surveillance systems like the one we're seeing in New Orleans. You cross a digital boundary, your voice is downranked. You cross a physical boundary, your face is flagged. In both cases, it's not Congress that made the decision. It's a task force, a mayor, a platform, or a nonprofit. No vote, no court, no transparency. And that's the true danger here. New Orleans, the New Orleans camera grid is not just a local issue. It's the domestic rollout of an international digital control system. The city becomes the lab. The standard gets set in Brussels. The enforcement happens quietly. One policy, one network, one platform at a time. This is how governance works now. It's not laws that you vote on. It's norms you get nudged into. Okay, so let's talk about the soft war language and how they're redefining reality without you noticing. Okay, let's talk about language. You guys have heard me talk about this quite frequently. It's not how you say it, it's what you say. Right now, AI algorithms are still in the stupid state compared to what they will be. And you can put in coded words and coded connections and coded this and coded that. And that's all well and good. But what happens when its reasoning skills get so good that it can see the code, can see the innuendos, knows the dissonant language that's being used to be able to sidestep? Because people will always try and figure out ways to sidestep the system to be able to get what they want, whether it be reach, whether it be growth. It doesn't matter what it is. This is what will end up happening. So again, let's talk about language, not the kind of language that gets you censored for being offensive. The kind that gets you manipulated into obedience without even realizing it. Because this new surveillance system, the one we just saw play out in New Orleans, doesn't just rely on cameras or algorithms. It runs on words. Excuse me. And we're living in an age where definitions are more dangerous than legislation. You've heard the phrases misinformation, disinformation, AI safety, harmful content, public trust. These sounds, sorry about that, guys. These sound responsible, reasonable, and even necessary. But what no one else tells you is that these words don't mean what you think they mean. And the definitions are changing on purpose to serve one single goal: to create a reality where questioning the narrative becomes a threat and trusting the system becomes survival instinct. Let's take the word misinformation. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. The average person hears that word and thinks, oh, someone wrong, someone got a fact wrong. It's probably a conspiracy. Better not to listen to that guy. But what does misinformation actually mean now? Let's go back to December 2024, the US-EU task force announcement. In the press release, it said, the task force will coordinate best practices to counter AI-generated misinformation and promote trusted sources of information. So it's saying to counter AI-generated misinformation. But does that also include user-generated misinformation? And they want to promote trusted sources. How do they define what is trusted? Now let's stop right there. Who does get to decide what is trusted? Because it's not you, it's not a jury, it's not even Congress, it's not even a law that's on the books. It's a panel, it's a task force, it's a private council, government-approved experts and corporate liaisons who meet behind closed doors and define the terms that determine what you're allowed to see and what you're not. This is the soft war. You're not being silenced by brute force. You're being programmed by systematic anesthesia. Let me explain what that really means. They don't have to arrest you or to ban your books. They just have to take your words and redefine them so completely that the public doesn't even notice what's being erased. Instead of saying censorship, they say safety. Instead of saying propaganda, they say alignments. Instead of surveillance, they say AI trust architecture. And most people fall for it, not because they're stupid, but because they've been trained to hear these soft words and associate them with protection instead of control. Words like trusted information equals pre-approved narrative. Digital integrity equals content moderation. Safety by design equals automated filtering systems. Disinformation labeling equals shadow banning opinions. Algorithmic fairness equals selective visibility. And that's a new one that YouTube has rolled out. And that's why they're saying that they're trying to help these new creators out, is because they're claiming algorithmic fairness. They want to make it more fair. Now we know what it really means, which is selective visibility. Okay, that means that if they can't put you in front of somebody, you're not going to get a view. And if you're not going to get a view, you're not going to make $1. And if you're not going to make $1, you won't be around for very long. So did they outright delete your account? No. What they did is they used things like disinformation labeling and algorithmic fairness and safety by design as a way to squeeze you out. These aren't technical improvements. They're political tools disguised as digital policies. And the average person, they're walking right into it because most people trust the label. They see this post contains misinformation and their instinct is not to investigate it, but to dismiss it. They've been conditioned, just like Pavlov's dog, to associate the truth with authority and doubt with danger. Okay, if you don't know anything about Pavlov's dog, let me give you a brief explanation. Pavlov had his dog trained on a certain schedule. And one day, as an experiment, he put the two same exact amounts of dog food in 2 separate bowls and placed them right next to each other. And the dog was so confused because it couldn't figure out which one's better that it literally starved to death. Okay? But here's the kicker. If you don't control the definitions, you don't control the debate. That's the whole point of this AI moderation system they're building. Not to fact check you, but to retrain you, to teach you what's okay to believe, to filter your reality until dissent becomes unthinkable, not because it's illegal, but because it's socially flagged. Remember this: language shapes law.